Thank you for standing by and welcome to the Coda Minerals CEO briefing. All participants are in a listen-only mode. There will be a presentation followed by a question and answer session. If you wish to ask a question, you will need to press the star key followed by the number 1 on your telephone keypad. I would now like to hand the conference over to Mr. Chris Stevens, Chief Executive Officer. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Darcy. Good morning to those of you in person. Good afternoon to everyone on the East Coast. Thank you for joining this call. To give you a bit of background, I often sort of 2-3 times a day will make fun presentations to large investors. And as part of sort of a commitment to transparency, we wanted to give everyone the opportunity to sort of join a call, to have some Q&A, and for me to just introduce the company and also to provide some background to recent work. You know, it's been an incredibly exciting quarter for Coda Minerals. So yeah, it's just to make sure that everyone has got sort of access to the same information and the same background and an opportunity to ask questions. So look, I'll talk for approximately 15 to 20 minutes. I'll move through things relatively quickly. And then sort of give about 10 minutes for question and answer as well. We put out a new presentation this morning to ASX. There are some new slides which is based off recent information. I'm not going to follow the structure of that presentation exactly, but where I am talking to areas that you can jump to a slide, then I'll just give a quick slide number. But I would say I won't follow it exactly just because I think it's there's sort of a better structure for this call. To be very clear, I will not discuss any unreleased results, and I will not answer any questions on unreleased results because that would be a breach of corporate governance and ASX guidelines. So I apologise in advance if I can't answer any of those questions. We are busy drilling, we're busy logging, and there's an enormous amount of work going on in the background. But what, as I say, we'll be doing is giving a lot of background to the information that's already in the market, and some information about the path forward as well, with that opportunity to answer questions. So in terms of agenda, I'll introduce the company. I'll then talk to the Emmie Bluff copper cobalt deposit briefly, and then move relatively quickly onto the IOCG at Emmie Bluff Deeps, which I think is generally what most people will want to be talking about and asking questions on the call. Also touching briefly on the Elizabeth Creek exploration assets and also Cameron River as well, and then just a sort of a bit of a path forward and summary. I'd say that'll take about 15 to 20 minutes, after which there'll be opportunity for Q&A, and I'm effectively happy to answer questions for as long as it takes within the total hour that we have for this call. So Coda Minerals, I'm sure most people are fairly familiar with the story, and I see some familiar names registered, but just to give a little bit of background, we listed in October 2020. We listed with the Elizabeth Creek assets and have since added Cameron River to our portfolio of assets. We've experienced very rapid growth since listing, and it's extremely gratifying, but also not entirely unsurprising, given that we had been sort of working at Elizabeth Creek for a good 3 years before we listed. So we were drilling on the day that we listed. We got moving very quickly, and I do strongly believe that, you know, companies that are able to move quickly and work from a good base of knowledge are more likely to be successful. So, you know, we're very pleased with the share price growth to date. But we do believe that, you know, there's a lot left in us yet. We have just under 100 million shares on issue. We have no debt. It's a very tightly held structure. The top 20 holds 62%. The chairman is the third largest shareholder, having put in a significant investment into the company, with the rest of the board also having fairly large interests. Cash in hand over $21 million. It was 21.8 at our last quarterly, and to say a very good structure in that regard. It's a very experienced board, and you can see the board bios in the presentation that we put out this morning on slide 5. And I think the key takeaway here is that it's a board that has very experienced people on it. I know Robin's on the call today. He just fresh from delivering the Gruyere gold project with Goldfields and Gold Road, the chairman of that steering committee. Paul Hallam, NED at Sandfire. Keith Jones, our chairman, again, significant investor in the company, but also former chairman of Deloitte Australia. Colin Moorhead is on the call as a fellow presenter and will likely jump in during Q&A. But this is someone who has, significant past record of taking companies, PT Medeka into a multi-billion-dollar copper company, on the board of several other companies, and our most senior geoscientist. So the main point here is that it's an experienced board, and sort of following on, we're talking about rapid growth, and some boards are not really experienced in doing that, whereas this is a board that's probably befitting a much more experienced company. So that's really the company and the corporate structure in summary. Very tightly held, under 100 million shares on issue, and a very strong cash balance to deliver on what, to be honest, is an enormous amount of work ahead of us. And I'll talk to that with the assets. So in terms of the assets, I believe we have an exceptional asset portfolio. We hold 70% interest currently in the Elizabeth Creek project, as well as the right to earn up to 75% in that project, and the right to earn up to 80% in the Cameron River farm in Queensland. The Elizabeth Creek joint venture, we've been working together with Torrens Mining, which is a listed company, ASXTIN, primarily focused on their wholly owned gold assets in Victoria. Working with them for a long time, we own 70%, as I say, with the right to acquire another 5% in the project by way of an irrevocable option for just $1.5 million. It is a contributing JV. We formed the JV after several years in farming. That JV was formed in early 2021. Coda has a casting vote over operational matters at a JV co level, but it is a very friendly and productive JV, and Torrens is currently contributing 30% of exploration costs, which is very helpful in some of these projects or some of these programs. The Cameron River project, again, we entered that in early 2021, and we have the right to earn up to 80% by way of expending $2 million over 3 years on the project. I believe it's a fantastic project. I won't talk to it enormously today. Always happy to answer questions via the info line or again in Q&A today. But these really are fantastic tenements, very much underexplored. We have very ambitious plans. We've been out in the field very recently and expect to see news flow from Cameron River soon, but I'm absolutely thrilled with what we're seeing there. I'll sort of go back and mostly focus on Elizabeth Creek. There are 3 areas of focus at Elizabeth Creek. The Emmie Bluff copper cobalt deposit. We call it a Zambian style copper cobalt. It's a strata-bound sediment hosted deposit. We're expecting a maiden resource in late Q3, or more likely at this point, early Q4 this year. Emmie Bluff Deeps, which I think everyone is very familiar with and likely to be the main focus of this call, and a rapid exploration, an IOCG target, and then ancillary exploration at Elizabeth Creek as well. So we have 2 existing indicated JORC deposits, as well as the Elaine IOCG target and other Zambian style copper cobalt targets, including Hannibal, MG14 North and Powerline. So the Emmie Bluff deposit, it's really what we listed on the back of in terms of sort of near-term growth assets. It's as a shale-hosted Zambian-style copper cobalt deposit. We call it Zambian style because it is quite similar, sort of analogous to many of the deposits mined in the DRC, and also geochemically very analogous to the Kufaschafer in Poland. Why does Emmie Bluff matter? Well, look, we, working on this tenure for some time before we listed with the existing JORC indicated deposits, and we were looking for scale and grade. We were looking for more. The existing deposits at approximately 280,000 tonnes of contained copper equivalent. A good start. It's great that they're indicated already relatively close to surface. It's given us a lot of material to do metallurgical test work on as well. But really we're looking for scale, and we found it at Emmie Bluff. Ironically, Emmie Bluff was discovered when they were drilling into the basement in a magnetic anomaly, and they found this sort of strange strata-bound copper cobalt mineralisation at around 400 metres. It wasn't the main focus of exploration, and not a lot of work got done on it at the time. We went back and immediately started looking at this and saying, what can this be? The study work is ongoing. It should be relatively simple mining, although we are working on a mining study at present, and we do understand the processing very well. You know, because of our experience with MG14 and Windabout, we really had a great run up on this. So we see this as a solid mid-sized asset in a market that's very much strongly rewarding real potential. And we've seen companies really get a huge re-rate as they've demonstrated something is real. You know, and by real, I really mean get a resource, demonstrate that you can mine it at least at a sort of scoping study level of confidence, demonstrate that you can process it. And we still have work to do. But we are advancing very well on that work. The study work is ongoing, and we are about to complete a 12-hole resource drill out to sort of bring the centres into a level of confidence that a resource geologist will hopefully give us a solid inferred resource this year. And we believe, we believe that's got real potential. The resource geos are lined up. The rigs will be demobilised towards the end of this month. We're making very, very good progress on that, probably faster than we were expecting at this point, given the pressure that Emmie Bluff Deeps is putting on us. It's very well served for infrastructure. It's again part of a project with 2 indicated resources already existing, as well as significant exploration potential. You know, Hannibal is a potential repeat of Emmie Bluff, but shallower, and you know, which makes for cheaper exploration and possibly also get close to the surface for future mining as well. We obviously have to find that, but again, it's part of a fantastic portfolio from early stage exploration right through to indicated resources. So why does it matter? We believe it's a good, solid development opportunity. We believe companies are being rewarded very strongly when they can demonstrate that what they have is a good, solid development opportunity, and we're advancing very well on that, especially given the huge amount of work we've done previously and prior to listing. So with that, I'll sort of move on and talk to the IOCG mineralisation. But again, I wanted to talk about Emmie Bluff first because it is a topic that remains very close to our value proposition, close to our hearts, and remains a major focus of work. We're certainly not going to drop the ball on that as we move forward. I'll be very happy to see that very wide, very nebulous exploration target move forward into a real resource this year. And please watch out for that in probably early Q4, but we'll certainly make announcements. The main sort of critical path on that is the assay timeframes, which are quite slow at the moment everywhere in Australia. So moving on to Emmie Bluff Deeps, this is obviously the IOCG hole, our IOCG deposit now, discovery. It's hard to IOCG discovery that has caused so much excitement. It's approximately 2 kilometres from Emmie Bluff. Now, I will say Emmie Bluff is highly probably related to the sort of basement mineralisation, and what it tells us is that there is demonstrably a large amount of copper in the system. On the 9th of June, we announced a hole which intersected 200 metres of very strong alteration and approximately 42 metres of sulfides visually logged by the geos. That was very exciting. That's now backed up by independent laboratory assays with over 35 metres of that 42 metres at 1% copper, peak grades of 5% in a lower bornite zone. And I'll talk to that bornite in a moment. Very strong gold grades as well, they correlate well with the copper, and we've been extremely pleased with that. Since then, we've announced 2 wedge holes, again, off visuals. I'd like over the longer term to move away from announcing sort of visuals every time and really sort of get to the point that we're able to announce sort of material new information each time incrementally, but at this point in that sort of early stage exploration discovery cycle, we thought it was very important to announce those 2 wedge holes relatively quickly. They were interesting. They were far more than we expected. We, to be honest, expected with a relatively small degree of separation from the parent hole to see more of the same, similar chalcopyrite zones with some accessory bornite and chalcocite at the top and bottom of the hole. What we did see was So really interesting, quite surprising. The wedge hole to the west was thinner, although we expect this probably to be a higher tenor of mineralization, higher abundance of log sulfides, which should translate to a higher grade than the parent hole, but over a thinner intersect, around 15 meters. It's been logged visually. And again, based on what we got out of the assays, our geos seem to be doing a pretty good job on making sure they log things well. And yeah, they're getting the visuals pretty spot on at the moment. Then in the hole to the east, the complete surprise, two fundamental things there. The first is that conversion of bornite from chalcopyrite. Now, bornite is the high-grade stuff. That's the good stuff. That's what you're looking for. And, almost complete replacement of chalcopyrite by bornite, but over a similar thickness. That should bode well as we go forwards, but this has not been currently being assayed. We do not have the assay grades yet. We expect those in approximately 3 to 4 weeks, subject to the assay lab turnaround. And then again, really interestingly, another logged roughly 15 meters from 900 meters depth of bornite, and again, more strongly abundant. So the geologists have logged this as a greater percentage of bornite within that upper zone. Why is this important? Well, what we're looking for is thickness. What we're looking for is hopefully for those two zones to join up as we go forwards with exploration. And it gives us confidence that there's fluid moving up, that there's likely to be a mantle tapping structure. And that fluid, copper-bearing fluid, has moved up from the basement and that is possibly pulsing out into the metasediments. And that's why we may be seeing that additional zone in Wedge 3, but it didn't actually penetrate as far as the parent hole. So if the exploration model is correct and that we are on the mantle of something that may look like an inverted, which is how, where you do have some kind of structure that's going down to the basement, this certainly gives us some more confidence in that model. Again, I will say to date, we have 3 holes, each about the diameter of a Coke can. They're about 120 meters apart, and that is in a relatively large area. So again, it's kind of, it's incredibly exciting, again, the rapid change, but we do have a lot of work to do, and, we are doing that work as we speak. In terms of those assay grades, look, interestingly, mixed reactions to those assay grades, generally incredibly positive from geologists. Why do I think that's the case? Well, it was logged as chalcopyrite. Chalcopyrite is that sort of lower grade of copper mineralization that you generally see on the edges, on the fringes, and around sort of zones within IOCG deposits. So we thought this was fantastic when we got the assays, very, very strong, 1.2% copper, over about 29 meters. Again, quite comparable. Chalcopyrite zones within IOCG tend to grade between about 0.5% copper up to about 1.5 to 2% copper. And you can see that in the overall resource grades of deposits in the area. The Carapatina resource grade at about 0.57% copper, reserve grade at about 1.1%, which is dominated by chalcopyrite. Similar story in the open pit at Olympic Dam. Prominent hill, again, a sort of 1.1% copper resource. Now, I need to be very clear. I'm not comparing 3 holes to any of the proximal deposits, and all of those large IOCG deposits are very different in and of themselves. But what we're seeing here is a sort of a comparable chalcopyrite to those zones within IOCGs. What the large economic IOCGs have in common is generally increasing thickness and large bornite zones. Now, we have not yet found that. What we have got is evidence of bornite in Wedge 2, evidence possibly of increasing thickness with that lower zone, but we still have exploration to do. It's early stage. We have work to do, and therefore I would make no comparison at all to any surrounding deposits. But certainly we know that we're in elephant country. We've got logged parent hole. We've got the bornite zone in Wedge 2. We've got increasing thickness. What we're now looking for is, a structure which goes down to the basement, increasing thickness, increasing scale, and again, 3 holes within a sort of 120 meter thickness is what we have. We have to go and get more, and we are exploring very actively, so that we have 2 drill rigs turning 24/7. Drilling at these depths can be challenging. We have great drillers, a great team, and as I say, we're awaiting assays from Wedge 1 and Wedge 2. We're currently drilling as we speak and logging as well, and we'll release those results as and when appropriate. In terms of the model, as I have explained, we're looking for that thickness, we're looking for that grade, we're looking for the bornite zones within broader areas of chalcopyrite. We have encountered both forms of mineralization, but we need scale, we need thickness, and so that's what we're looking for. The hypothesis, the exploration model, on a mantle of a larger fringe, larger system. Again, we have evidence of a lot of copper moving around in this system. We currently believe, due to that trend of going from west to east, from wedge hole 1 to the parent hole to wedge hole 2, with the increasing thickness, increasing tenor of mineralization, and the conversion of bornite, that we're likely to be, needing to be exploring in that sort of southeast and east area that sort of fits between the two mineralized holes, which are the parent hole, obviously wedge 2, and then over to the east at MGD 55, which is a deeper, more weakly mineralized hole, which is off of the main low mag, high grav anomaly. The good news, and this is great news, we are exploring in an area that has enough space to fit large world-class IOCG systems, which do tend to be quite narrow and tend to be quite deep. And we have intersected mineralization, which may be on the fringes of a much larger system. The bad news is that there is enough space to fit several world-class IOCG systems in this area, given that they tend not to be very wide and they tend to be very deep, which means not every hole that we hit is likely to or guaranteed to hit mineralization. This is exploration after all, so that we do, as I keep saying, have some work ahead of us. And we're very excited. We're currently drilling in an area that we believe is of the greatest prospectivity. Very much hope that to be proven right. And as I say, we will release information to market once we get down into those mineralized zones, which will hopefully be over the next couple of weeks. But look, we are, as I say, we're working hard to follow up. These things do need some chasing. We're excited to do that. We have the right team, the right drillers. We have a fantastic cash backing, and we're on it. So as I said, 2 drill rigs turning 24/7. It's challenging exploration, but we've gone very well to date. And essentially watch this space. So hopefully with Emmie Bluff Deeps, that's given a reasonable amount of context. We're exploring in a relatively large area. We've had very good results to date. That bornite in particular, with the increasing thickness, very encouraging. But I'll say it again one last time, we do have work to do, and we're out there exploring. It's a fantastically exciting time. Just to touch briefly on the other assets at Elizabeth Creek and Cameron River, the Elaine IOCG target is a similar model to Emmie Bluff Deeps. It's probably earlier stage, more greenfields, but there is drill-backed evidence of IOCG mineralization in the system, similar to that MGD 55 hole in Emmie Bluff Deeps. We would hope to drill this year. There are no approvals internally in place to do it, but the external, the EPEPA approvals are in place. Again, similar model, very exciting, and something I believe very much is worthy of drilling. I know Colin will back me up on that one. Hannibal, that's another potential repeat of Emmie Bluff. At the moment, it's just a geophysical anomaly. That will be drilled over the coming weeks, and we're very excited to go and drill that. It is, being closer to the surface, cheaper exploration than Emmie Bluff, the copper cobalt. And again, sort of very exciting. Our exploration team has proven their ability to explore and find things to date. So again, very exciting, and other Zambian style, with basically a plan to increase the total scope of that copper cobalt mineralization from early stage exploration through to the indicated resources. And Cameron River, what I'll say is watch this space, because I'm very, very excited about that. I think it's great ground, and the team is doing good work. So with that, I'll just briefly summarize. Appreciate I've been talking for about 20 minutes. Very well funded company, $21 million in the bank, with a contributing JV, which certainly helps towards exploration costs. We have work ahead, but we absolutely have the team and the funds and the ability to do that, which is fantastic. very strong board, a board used to growing companies, experience with copper, and gold and development projects. I will say, as a CEO, I'm in a dream situation with just absolutely fantastic guidance, and as shareholders, I believe you should be very confident in the oversight and supervision that myself and the team are given. It's a really fantastic environment to work in, and I think that's important. In terms of projects, obviously we have existing copper cobalt assets in a bull market with indicated resources and a maiden resource at Emmie Bluff expected this year. Emmie Bluff Deeps, frankly, could not be more exciting right now. 3 announced holes, assay backed now with good, strong chalco zone, bornite zone currently being assayed, and active exploration ongoing. As I said, it's incredibly exciting. It's incredibly hard work, and it's just a wonderful place to be. So, as a shareholder in this company as well, I'm very excited. And with that, I'll thank you. To hand over to questions and answers. As I said, happy to answer any questions on, Coda Minerals, on the copper, cobalt, on the IOCG, on Cameron River, and that I unfortunately can't talk to anything that isn't already in the market due to corporate governance and listing rules. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. If you wish to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone and wait for your name to be announced. If you wish to cancel your request, please press star 2. If you're on a speakerphone, please pick up the handset to ask your question. We will now pause a moment to allow for question registration. Thank you. Your first question comes from Steve Todoric from Sprott Global Resource Investments. Please go ahead.
Hi, Chris. What's the likely average depth of the wedge holes that you're drilling, and how long do you think it's taking you to drill each one of those holes?
So each one of those wedge holes is wedging from about 500 meters. We terminate them when they hit the basement, which currently is around about 1,100 meters. Obviously, with such rapidly changing geological sort of structures around us, and I do think there's a lot structurally going on, which I didn't talk to earlier, but obviously that may change. But each wedge hole is taking about 2 to 3 weeks. It really depends on how good the separation we get from that sort of 500 meter range. The initial wedge hole is incredibly challenging, but we're doing a lot better now.
Okay. And the second diamond drill rig, that hole has started like a week ago or so, or last couple of days?
Yeah, that's correct. Last couple of days. So we're currently drilling from surface with in just to the southeast of the deposit, and we'll make sure we put up a sort of a full update on drilling plans over the next short while.
Okay, so that hole will probably go down 1,100 meters and you wedge off it?
Yes, that's correct. So the decision to wedge obviously be made depending on what we find and the circumstances in the hole. But at this point, the plan is to do 2 wedge holes from each surface hole. But obviously, we'll sort of refine that based on field decisions as we go through.
Okay. Do you think the geophysical people can squeeze any more information out of the data, or is it pretty well going to come down to drilling now and logging?
Both. I think this is a very, there's a lot of science going on, so we're throwing every tool at this that we can. We're working on petrology, which I think we've announced is ongoing. That obviously takes a while to prepare the slides, but certainly dating that granite that we found is very, very important to the exploration model. And also sort of working through the pathfinder elements, especially down from the serum. There's a zircon index that we're using as well. The geophysicists are working on additional data. We have, frankly, the best structural geologists I've ever worked with working with us right now as well. I do think there's an enormous amount structurally going on here. So again, it's sort of a combination of everything that we can. It's a combination of science and also a very, very high stakes game of battleships with the drilling at the moment. So we're sort of doing both as we progress.
Okay, what's the latest on COVID protocol and whatnot? Not that long ago, I think you weren't able to get the results from site to the labs. What's the latest in that situation?
So South Australia, fortunately, came out of lockdown as was expected. So the delay of getting Wedge 2 to the lab was about 3 days at most in the end, which is great. And we've also moved towards just cutting the mineralized zones that are logged and getting those in for assay first, and then submitting the sort of ancillary zones later. So that should speed up assays a little bit, but the lab is, again, quite backed up. The COVID is not affecting us at all at the moment. Western Australia is fortunately COVID-free, and South Australia appears to be pretty similar situation. There are no lockdowns there. So as we go forward, we should be okay. But obviously, we've got reasonably solid procedures in place if there is another outbreak in SA.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Once again, if you wish to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone and wait for your name to be announced. There are no further questions at this time. Once again, if you wish to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone and wait for your name to be announced. Thank you. Your next question comes from Gerard Marnie, private investor. Please go ahead.
Oh, Chris, just one question. When are they likely to start production of the copper and all that in the future? What's the sort of timeline you envisage this starting up?
So obviously any copper production is going to be related at this point to the Zambian style copper cobalt. We have 2 indicator resources, which obviously means that we can release study work off that based on ASX and ASIC rules, which is a fantastic start. In terms of Emmie, Bluff, obviously we need to get a resource first and then to run that through our study process. Unfortunately, ASX rules don't allow me to give a production target or time frame until we've got a certain level of confidence in the resources and we're still pre-resource. What I can say is that we've done an enormous amount of work on that existing indicated resources, which I think will give us a really good running head start on any study work. So I think I'm going to have to say watch this space, but certainly, we believe that this is a relatively solid development opportunity. We have fantastic development expertise, especially in Robin and Paul on our board, and we're certainly working through that study process. But I would expect it to be a good midterm opportunity, not something that would likely drag out forever. But clearly, given that we're in a pre-inferred resource stage at the moment, we obviously need to work through that, get a resource, and then work through the study phase before we can announce a definitive timeline.
Thank you. There are no further questions at this time. I'll now hand back to Mr. Stevens for closing remarks.
Thank you very much for everyone being on the call. I have to confess this is a new format for me, so it's somewhat more challenging than sort of talking to a presentation, but I do thank everyone for your time and for giving me the opportunity to sort of present some extra information on the company. This is something that we'll try and do more often. Also, info@codaminerals.com comes straight through to me, and I do try and respond to every question personally, or at least with a sort of a direct senior member of the team. So if you do have any other questions, info@codaminerals.com, or leave a message with our answering service, and you'll get a call back as well. So thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
That does conclude our conference for today. Thank you for participating. You may now disconnect.